Okay, we've got a quorum here now, so we're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. I'd like to recognize Representative Momtahan to start us off with a word of prayer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's bow. Lord, we're just coming to you today, Lord, with so many different issues here in our state that we're addressing. Lord, we just ask that you be with us, give us guidance, give us wisdom as we do your will. Lord, we ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. All right, we've got 3 bills on our agenda today we're going to be taking up. These are all by committee substitute. Well, let me take that back. Senate Bill 51, we thought there would be a substitute to that bill, so that was recommitted from rules. It has already been passed out of this committee, so we will present it in just a little bit for consideration for passage back to rules with no changes. I'll start off with this is Senate Bill 170. The original author of the bill was Senator Kim Jackson. We have she has graciously agreed to allow us to use her bill as a vehicle. So we have a substitute that I would like to call on Representative Osteen to present. And Representative Osteen, if it's my understanding, this is basically the same language as House Bill 262, which passed out of rural development and passed off of the House floor with no dissenting votes. I think it was 173 to 0. Is that, correct? Am I understanding? Let me get your mic on. There we go.
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. Well, go ahead and present this as concisely as possible.
Yes,
we have
sir.
a regulated industries group that's going to be piling in on us very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. I appreciate the opportunity to hear this. This is Senate Bill 170. It has the exact same language as House Bill 262. This bill was passed, as you said, 173 to nothing, or to 0. The grant that would be created by this bill would be used to increase generator capacity that was found to be woefully insufficient during and after Hurricane Helene. These critical improvements will position our state to withstand future hurricanes. I will stand for questions if there are any.
Okay, we have one light flashing. Representative Momtahan.
Just at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion to pass, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Oh,
thank you. Just
thank you so much.
Bring me a form and we'll get it ready for rules.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the next 2 bills, let's see, has our vice chair come in yet? Okay, I'm going to present Senate Bill 51 very briefly from the microphone here. Again, Senate Bill 51, this is Senator Setzler's bill. It is the quality-based selection program, proposing that for the architectural and engineering services for counties and municipalities. This has passed this committee and was in our rules. We thought there was going to be a change to help it get through rules. It ended up not being a change, so we'd like to put it to this committee for consideration for passage again, and I would entertain a motion at this time. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We do have a couple of lights. We'll entertain these. Well, we got one light. We'll entertain this in discussion on the motion. Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this the exact same bill that he presented to us?
It is, yes. The language is exactly the same. There is no substitute on this bill.
Okay, thank
That
you.
is LC 473243. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, and this brings us to the last bill on our schedule, which is another substitute that we have done. Senator Robertson presented us with a bill which would have banned ranked choice voting in the state of Georgia. That bill has been, the language of that bill has been removed and replaced with a elections language that has many of this sections have been vetted in our subcommittee. The rest of it has been vetted either through this committee or the Senate Ethics Committee, and none of this is this has been widely circulated in the last 24 hours at least. So I'm going to go through this real quickly by section, if y'all would, and then I'll take questions from the committee related to this. The first section adds a couple of definitions that are used later when we address the general subject matter of ERIC, or a non-governmental multi-state voter list maintenance program. So that's section 1. Section 2 would allow, currently the speaker and the lieutenant governor can appoint their respective chambers' appointment to the state elections board out of session without having to have a vote of either chamber. They can do it as just a leadership appointment. However, there's no provision to allow them to remove that appointment or to replace that appointment without having a vote of the chamber. So what we've done here is granted that authority to the speaker and to the lieutenant governor. So that's section 2. Section 2.1 is the provision that was worked out and negotiated with Gavrio. I know there were some folks that wanted more time, but what we're saying here is we're not interfering with the state election board's ability to promulgate rules. What we are saying is if rules were put in place 60 days prior to the election date, that rule will not go into effect until 30 days after, unless it is an emergency rule. So that's section 2.1. Section 3, let me get my notes here, make sure I'm on the right page. Okay, section 3 requires the Secretary of State's office to provide the list of electors to those requesting that at no charge. Currently, they charge for those lists, and this came from a request from some of our counties wanting to be able to get those lists for their counties and provide them in their office to county residents at no charge. So we've just extended that so we can follow along with some of our neighboring states, Florida, North Carolina, who do provide these at no charge. There are some concerns about the cost of that, but we can work that out with the Secretary of State's office. Section 3.1, let me drop back. On section 3, there's also a provision at the end of section 3 that will require the state elections board to submit to the General Assembly a report evaluating procedures to improve the accuracy and efficiency of voter registration systems without participation in, and I won't read any further, but it's basically in a program similar to ERIC. We have that defined in the code section, or in the section 1. Section 4 3.1 removes the state of Georgia from participating in ERIC. And when we get to the effective date section, I'll kind of go over a timeline and how we're doing that. We're not going to leave us stranded without a system in place. We've got a timeline worked out for that. So we'll cover that here shortly when we get to effective dates. Section 5 will prevent weekend drop-off, basically what's kind of been referred to as pop-up locations for drop-off of the absentee ballots just on the weekend prior to the general or primary election. It does allow localities that normally would open the elections office on Monday to accept those ballot drop-offs on Monday with notice. Section 6 is a provision that was actually the original version of Representative Fleming's House Bill 397, which would allow municipalities in municipal-only elections to opt out of one or both of the Saturday election that is required currently in law. And it is an opt-out, so it requires a vote of the governing body for the municipality. Section 7 allows referendum questions to be placed on special primary or special elections. We also, in Section 8, we remove a date that is a special election date that is currently in code, that is in September prior to a November election. Those two are just extremely close. They're about 45 days apart, so this will allow for a little less pressure on our local elections offices and a little easier flow for those special elections. Then Section 9 is the effective dates, and I'm going to kind of go over that part, especially how it applies to the ERIC provision. What we are requiring is the State Elections Board to provide a report of the procedures for our voter roll maintenance and registration system to the legislature, which would specifically be to this committee and to the Senate Ethics Committee by December 31st of this year, 2025. Then that would give the legislature the 2026 session to look at and consider any legislation that may come out of that recommendation. Then we would not actually require the state to pull out of ERIC until July 1st of 2027. We have a statewide election coming up next year. Good possibility we may have new statewide officers, specifically a Secretary of State. We don't want them to come in on day one being in a position where they don't have a process and procedure in place to deal with this. So we're going to give them 6 months to get their staff in place and to evaluate basically the bust that they caught. So that's the timeline, the reason that we have set it out in that manner. The rest of the subject matter in this bill will either go into effect upon signature or become effective July 1st of 2026 for Section 8. So that is a very quick run through, and as I say, this has been discussed over the last week and a half. Every provision in this has been discussed thoroughly in either this committee, our subcommittee, or Senate Ethics Committees. Pretty much everybody that's in the audience has had an opportunity to weigh in. We've taken suggestions from all over the place. We're giving some things to some people that have asked. We're not giving anybody everything they've asked, unfortunately, but we've done so much with elections over the last 4 years. I feel like the provisions that we've called for in this bill are fairly common sense and can be justified. I've actually had meetings with the Secretary of State and his staff, and there's some things they'd like to do differently in here, but some things that they feel like they can work with, and we'll continue to work with them as well as everyone else to try to get us to a point to where we can continue to have successful, strong elections that people can participate in. And I will take some questions. Representative Sanchez.
Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate you. And so I'm looking, there's a lot in this bill. We just got it this morning, so, I was looking through it. There's a lot of different provisions I want to ask about. I want to first ask about leaving ERIC. Why are we doing such a huge, insane, big move like that without having any sort of study committee to actually fully vet this and see if this is actually a good idea instead of doing this all last minute? Is there any way we can do a study committee instead of just going through with this right now?
I am actually working on a resolution, and we'll be meeting with House leadership asking for a study committee to do just that. If we're not able to do that as a House study committee, we will appoint an ad hoc committee within this committee to look at not only the ERIC process, but also the interaction, the entire elections process as we have it now. There's some things coming up, some trigger dates coming up, mainly the expiration of the contract that we have in a few years on our current voting system, as well as the interaction between the Secretary of State, the State Elections Board, the legislative bodies. There are a lot of things that really need to be evaluated that have been looked at in piecemeal for many years. We just need to look at it from an overall perspective.
Okay, so
thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And if I could just follow up, I do think that if that's the case, we should wait for that before we move on this. But also a separate question on the absentee ballot section. So this bill would make it so that people cannot hand deliver absentee mail-in ballots with the weekend after early voting, and also if there's no notice given the day before Election Day. Is there any reason why those 3 specific days are given for not being able to hand deliver absentee ballots? Are those 3 days a day where they're poisoned or something, or why are those 3 specific days?
Mainly for consistency. It's currently allowed that, or it's not prohibited for offices to open up over the weekend to accept dropped off ballots, but not every county does that, and we're trying to, again, to reach a consistent method if we can in all areas. So
So if in Cobb County we had an issue where people were not presented with their absentee ballots on time and they had to open up an emergency on the weekend in order to accept those, is that what would happen with this bill if this were a bill that
Well,
passed?
it depends on what your definition of emergency and what the compulsion for that opening is. If that is a court-ordered emergency, then this would not override that, of course. But if it's a situation to where, it's just a local decision to do that, then this would prohibit that.
Okay.
Okay. Representative Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not on the election subcommittee. Can you or whoever else brought this to us, put this together, tell us exactly what came from the state election board and exactly what the Secretary of State agrees to and objects to? That would be helpful for me.
Okay.
This conflict between the Secretary of State and the election board that's been ongoing for years now is highly problematical, and I'd like to know exactly where they stand on these provisions.
Okay, good, and that's a good question, and I can give you my my summation of where we are on that. Okay, first of all, the ability for we'll just kind of go again through sections. I can kind of tell
That'd
you
be
the
helpful.
source of a lot of this information. The ability for the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor to remove appointments. I'm not sure where the exact source of that. That was actually a bill that Representative Draper had dropped earlier this year.
And I thought we passed that on the House.
We
I
did
thought
pass that
This committee
bill.
passed it to give leeway outside the session, because when Speaker Burns appointed a MAGA-supported election board member, when we were out of session, I went and researched with Legislative Counsel, and there was no way to take them out.
That is correct.
So we're going
There's no
back
way.
to no way to take it out instead of the bill that we passed.
No, this actually includes the bill that we passed. That's what that is. That Section 2 is the language that was passed that allows the
Okay.
Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor to do just that.
And the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker agree to that
The Speaker does
provision?
agree to that. I haven't had a conversation with the Lieutenant Governor himself on that
Okay,
matter.
then that would be helpful, section by section. Where did it come from, and does the Secretary of State agree?
Okay, Section 2.1 was the original request came from Gavrio, the local elections officials. They requested 90 days. There was some negotiation that went on between the elections board, members of the elections board, and some of the leadership of Gavrio. The Senate proposed 60 days, so we took that negotiated time frame and added that to the bill.
Secretary of State, in terms of management of the 7 million people vote, I'm trying to think, they would have to implement a change within 30 days, within 60 days of election, take effect 30 days following the date. I'm trying to figure out the exact timetable.
We are not affecting the ability of the state elections board to promulgate rules. We're not removing that or postponing that. What we are saying is if they pass and propose a rule change within 60 days of the election or the primary, that rule change cannot go into effect until 30 days after that election or primary has been completed.
And the Secretary of State agrees with that provision or not?
The Secretary of State has not expressed, he or his office have not expressed an opinion that I recall in our discussions on that particular one. I would expect that, and they may have actually expressed a support for that because of the particular difficulties it put them in before.
The litigation that came from this summer's Secretary of State involves the court set that aside, implementation days, isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes.
But the court didn't tell us a date, I don't believe. So we're making up a date right now of 60 days.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Section 3, the Secretary of State office not charging for electors list. The Secretary of State's office opposes this. They currently charge just short of $500 for a statewide list. This actually came from Gwinnett County and a request for someone who is on the Gwinnett County Board of Elections requesting that the counties be provided that list at no cost so they can provide it to their constituents in the county. So, and then the language that came through the Senate, and we just carried that particular language over here, just made it mirror what's being done in some other states, which do have larger staffs than our Secretary of State's office, so they have objected to that portion. But it was an objection, but it was not just this is a deal breaker at all, okay?
Thank you.
Let's see, Section 3 also, the State Elections Board to evaluate the procedures for voter registration outside of a program similar to ERIC. That was a suggestion that came from a former member of the State Elections Board, okay? And it was agreed to by the State Elections Board chair and a couple of other members that I did speak to. The
Jerry,
removal.
I'm
Ma'am.
sorry, forgive me, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the next portion, the next two sections, 3.1 and 4, the removal from ERIC. We actually have the author of the bill in the chamber here, Representative Montahan, who that bill passed this committee, did not pass out of rules. It was, actually, did it pass out of rules? No, it didn't pass out of rules. It was available for consideration in rules, but did not pass out of rules on crossover day.
And Secretary of State opposes abandoning ERIC, is that correct?
The Secretary of State's office does oppose of abandoning ERIC. However, they do recognize and appreciate pushing that decision or that final withdrawal date out to July of 27. And they are also fully in support of what we're considering and trying to do, either as a study committee or an ad hoc committee on this committee to look.
Is there
at that
anything
process.
equivalent to ERIC produced by any other entity today?
It's my understanding at this time there may not be, but I can't speak fully to that because we have not provided proper study to that subject.
I thought that the folks that were making proposals or allegations that we were not careful enough about our voting rights was relying on the data that came from ERIC. Is that correct?
I can't speak to their motivation. So, okay. I will. 23, Representative Montahan. I'll let you help to address that question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a question I got on the ropes from a constituent who came and asked me about the data, and so I do want to address that. They asked me, they were actually from the state of Florida, and they said, we had such a good time, moving our voter registration here, and there was no duplicate listings. And I said, well, great. Florida's not in the ERIC system. So we do partner with other states, like the state of Florida, just an example of many, many states. There's not many left in this ERIC system, so I'm looking forward to the new frontier. With that, Mr. Chairman, I know that we have talked about this bill at length. There's so much here. I would call the question, Mr. Chairman.
No, we object to calling question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will not recognize that at this time because we do have a couple of other people who wish to speak. I will just kind of quickly run through the other sections of the bill and kind of mention where they came from. The prevent the drop-off on the weekends that we discussed earlier. That was actually a suggestion from the Georgia GOP. It was one component of a list of about 12 that they provided to us that actually made sense due to some of the confusion and issues we had and would fit into the consistency intention that I have related to that. Municipals can opt out of one or both Saturdays. This came from Representative Fleming, and it was a request. Representative Fleming, you want to mention anything regarding that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the language has not changed on that portion that we passed out of this committee prior to crossover day. I know there was an amendment in this committee that we took to include the city council having a public hearing and then voting. So that language is exactly as we passed it out of here, and that was on the original 397.
And what happened to that? Forgive me, I don't know. What happened? Did that bill pass through rules and get to the House floor?
It did, and it's now sitting in Senate Ethics Committee.
Okay, thank you. The allowing to present the referendum question on special elections, primaries or elections, as well as the change of some of the dates. Those came out of Representative Trey Kelly's bill that would assist a situation that he has and kind of fits in with the scope of the projects or the overall intent to maintain consistency and allow our local governments more access to SPLOST referendums, T-SPLOST, that sort of thing. And then, well, that gets us down to the effective dates. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's skip that one. Representative Burnell. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After serving on SB 202, when we were given amendments and everything at the last minute, so is this since we have this and most of us haven't read through it, is this a hearing only bill?
No, ma'am. We intend to put this for action today.
Thank you.
We have had, again, we've had subcommittee hearings, we've had a lot of discussion with, in a lot of different avenues on this, so we do intend to propose that, yes. Which one? Representative Adesanya.
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. I too have some concerns, Chairman. This bill looked like a lot of things have been done with it, and I think we need to take some time to really evaluate. And I would like to make a motion that we table this bill.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second. Motion to table, no discussion. All in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. All right, we're going to do a show of hands. Those in favor of tabling, raise your right hand, please. Okay, all opposed to tabling, raise your right hand. 11.
They're playing games.
Okay, pull my vote out. This is 11 without me.
It's 11.
Okay,
12.
12, okay. Okay, the motion fails.
SB 202.
Next, what's that? Okay.
Object. We got questions. That needs to be.
Okay, we'll take three more questions here real quick, three more comments if we can do it quickly. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with all due respect, I think I've only seen maybe 2 of these concepts, so I think it's disingenuous to say, and I'm on the election subcommittee, so I want to be clear that this is the first time I'm seeing at least 70% of this bill. I have a question. Has a fiscal note been done on pulling out of ERIC? Because I'm told in other states it's cost millions of dollars, and we keep putting unfunded mandates on our counties across our committees right now, and I'm just curious if a fiscal note has been done. And then finally, we talk about uniformity, and I'm grateful that you took amendments on the Saturday voting, but you're putting uniformity only in one direction where it costs you more, but you have a lot less population. We have large counties, and it's always been allowed to take an absentee ballot, especially on the day before the election because it's a weekday, to the county office registrar and drop off a ballot. So why can't the small counties who don't want to fund that opt out, like we're opting out of Saturday voting? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mary Frances Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my comments are, there's language in this that has not been vetted by rules. There is, this is a continuation of what started with House Bill 202. The Secretary of State was elected by the people of Georgia to run elections, and much of this is a blatant attempt to ignore the will of the people and do a workaround around the Secretary of State's office. And I see it as a continuation, a partisan continuation of relentless attacks on access to voting, which is the right of every citizen. And I'm just really shocked that this push continues, and I wonder when it will stop.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Representative Bazemore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just need some help in understanding. I know we talked about ERIC, and we talked about a study committee to try to address ERIC, but is there going to be an overlap, or is there going to be a void at some point that we don't have ERIC while we're still studying?
Good question, and I refer back to our discussion relating to the effective dates. Under this bill, we would not pull out of ERIC until July 1st of 2027, which gives us the amount of time, basically, a year and a half almost to make a determination as to what direction we need to run. And we're still working on that study committee.
So if we do have the study committee and we determine that we don't need to pull out until we have something else.
The intent of this and the intent of that I have in crafting the language for the study committee that we're working on right now would be to have things in place for the 26th legislative session so we can make that determination. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, Representative Gullett.
Thank you. I think just to clarify, I know it was said that most of these things, only two had been heard from before. I believe nearly, I think all, if not all, maybe with lack of one, has been through this committee at some point before. As far as it going to rules, has it been vetted by rules? The process is once it passes this committee, it'll go to rules, which would be the vet of it. So because we've seen these bills before, or these different sections before in bills, because it's going to go to rules to be vetted again as a concern, I'd like to make the motion to do pass.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Representative Sanchez?
Thank you. Yes. There is one very important measure that wasn't in any of the bills, which is the fact that we're changing the administrative purposes of the state election board to the state accounting office instead of the Secretary of State in Section 2G. I don't know why we're doing that. I don't know why the state accounting office is somehow more qualified than Secretary of State to administer the state election board. Do they even have the training for that? How are we going to comply with the Open Meetings Act with that and the Open Records Act? There's a lot of issues with that, and I feel like we should really look at this more thoroughly instead of throwing all these random bills together at the last second and trying to push it through. So
I will address that concern you have. That this is something that has been looked at. We're basically modeling this after the Ethics Commission. They currently administratively report to the state accounting office, and basically what we're trying to do is to try to put the framework in place and the structure in place to return the state elections board to its original intent and give it the autonomy that it has so that it can monitor elections from one aspect while the Secretary of State fulfills his obligation of conducting the elections and maintaining the records. So thank you for the question. We have no further discussion showing, so we'll take a show of hands. All in favor of passage of the bill. That is Senate Bill 175 LC 473697S. Please raise your right hand. Okay, and all opposed, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries. That's all on our agenda. We will adjourn this meeting and turn the room over to Regulated Industries. Thank you. Here you go.